everyone, I am super excited to have with us a very dear friend on the Storiez podcast. This is his second time on the show and our first time together doing it in person. So I am very excited to have the absolute honor to host my dear friend Yotam Segev, co-founder and CEO of the most phenomenal cybersecurity company called Cyera. I highly advise you to go Google them, check them out, and see what they're doing, what they've accomplished until now. Now, Yotam is a very special individual. So I'm excited to have him here with us in person to learn about how he's changed and progressed since our last conversation, which was when the company just came out of stealth mode. So without further ado, now before we get into it, one more thing. Please subscribe and leave a review on whichever platform you're listening to this podcast. So you may be watching it on YouTube, or you might be listening on Spotify or iTunes. Please go ahead, subscribe, leave a review, share this episode with someone else that you think can benefit from listening and hearing Yotam's incredible wisdom. And thank you so much for joining us. Yotam, wow.
Thank you for having me, Ephraim, and in person for the first time.
You're welcome. This is incredible. This is absolutely amazing. I'm very excited. Let's start off like this. The first time we had our first podcast, you just came out of stealth. I mean, we recorded it before stealth, but you just came out of stealth. You came out of stealth with $60 million. Less than 50 employees. I don't know how much revenue you had then. You were still living in Israel. Now, if you look at Cyera today, you've raised $740 million or 60 million, I think?
60, yeah.
A $3 billion valuation, over 400 employees. You moved to New York. I mean, that's a lot of change. So I want to divide the question into twofold, and let's focus on the first thing first. How have you personally changed as a person from a company with 50 employees to a company currently right now with 400 employees, and with that valuation, we like that? How have you changed? How's your home life changed? How's you as a person, how have you grown? And then we'll focus on the second part, which will be focused on the company itself.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I think that with the progression of the company, a lot of the focus, a lot of the emphasis has shifted towards leadership. And how do you enable and how do you support others in their journey to become very effective leaders, very impactful leaders within the company. In the early days when the company is 50 people, what you can do personally as CEO with your own two hands and with your own mind can get the company to where it needs to go.
Right.
But as the company starts to scale up, it becomes more about the people on the team and how do you enable them to succeed, to do well, to progress, to evolve. And how do you create a culture of progress and that, propagates all the way to the people throughout the organization, throughout the company. So I think the biggest change for me from a professional perspective is that whereas the last time we spoke, I felt like a lot of the outcomes were really resting on my shoulders to deliver. Me and my co-founder, more specifically. I think today, a lot of it is resting on a very, very strong, solid, dedicated, and exciting team. And my job is to facilitate their success, to support their success, to find ways to help them grow into the next phase of the company, to find the gaps that they might not be seeing in their business and help them find ways to shore it up.
Right.
So that's definitely been the biggest change on the professional side from, let's say, 50 to 500 people that I've experienced. I think that on the personal level, the last 3 years have been very, very, very consuming. Right? A company like Cyera attracts a lot of energy from the people who participate in it. And that's across the board. It's not unique to me. I think that everybody that is part of the team shares the excitement and the dedication. And you find yourself working more than you might expect. Not necessarily because you feel like you have to, but more so because you want to.
Right.
And it just pulls you in. And I think that that's been amazing, an amazing ride. And I love being in that place that is all in. Right? Like that's a place where I really enjoy operating, and it's very easy for me. Right? Like you're all in, you know exactly where you are. And I think that as we mature as a company, and you start to look at the long haul, right? Like how do I continue to support this company and run this company, not only for a few more years, but maybe for a few more decades. Then you also asking yourselves questions about balance and boundaries and family and how to find the right ways to really make that puzzle work together. I think that Cyera has been like foremost in my mind and in my experience almost every day, almost every minute over the past few years. And as it's starting to have a life of its own, it's also important for me to find new avenues to continue to fuel my growth and to continue to fuel my progress as a leader that are not necessarily within the company.
Interesting. How have you grown in a sense from leveling up your own management skills from, let's say, 50 to 400? Because being a CEO of a 50-person company is very different than 100, and very different than 200, 300, 400. And eventually when you get to 1,000, it's a whole separate business. How did you level up in all those milestones?
First of all, I'm not sure ever so much. Like, that would be a good assumption. Maybe I hope you're right, but
I've seen the progress. I know you. I see.
I don't know if the assumption holds, right? But again, I think the biggest aspect is you change the focal point from the company's operation, which was like the first stage for me, the customers, the product market fit, taking the product to market, to the management, the people. And you put a lot of focus on the team that you've hired and needs to get the company to where it is. And some of the things the team does, you love. And you're like, wow, this is the best. Never seen anything this good. Couldn't have imagined it'd be this good. And other things, you're saying, oh, well, I don't really like that, and I don't want that to be the way we show, or the way we progress. And you have to have these discussions with the leaders and understand, okay, are they not getting to it because they don't have enough resources? Or are they not getting to it because they see it differently than you? And if they see it differently than you, then we need to hash it out. We need to find out, okay, maybe I don't understand something about their business and why they're either not prioritizing something or, putting the emphasis in other places. Or there's an execution challenge, right? Like we want to be better, we want to take care of it, but, we just aren't managing to reach all those places that we need to be in. And you have to figure out ways to support them. Generally, I think they know how, like, the management team knows how to run their business better than me.
Right.
My job is to make sure they have what they need to succeed, and whether that's a clear understanding of the goal or actual support. And hey, we want to make a big difference by hire in one aspect of the company. Let's find the best person in the industry to hire and really be able to accelerate us in that aspect.
Right. Most cyber companies don't make it to where you guys are at. Like either like they'll get acquired way before, or they'll shut down. The space that you guys have from the valuation perspective and everything else is something that once every 5 years, a company like that acquires. So if you look at the Israeli cybersecurity ecosystem, you have obviously Wiz, you have Armis, you have Checkpoint from back in the day. Palo Alto, if you want to consider it an Israeli company or not.
Sneak,
right?
Storiez.
And then there's Cyera. The list is very short. And how many cybersecurity companies are founded a year in Israel? Over 40 a year. What have you done right that got you to the space from a go-to-market perspective, sales perspective? At the same time, what are the mistakes you made? Or what are the things that you did not do in order to get to the space?
So I think when we started, we took on a pretty substantial amount of market risk.
Okay.
Right? DSPM was not a market when we started. Nobody talked about DSPM. The acronym wasn't out there. It wasn't a space. If I would do ever in my life another company, I will never take on as much market risk as we took on when we chose this space. What we did do to offset the market risk is we did very extensive pain validation.
Okay.
So CISOs, our customers, chief information security officers, they've got 100 problems, maybe 1,000. It's not hard to find a problem.
Right.
But obviously, they're not going to solve those 100 problems and definitely ain't solving 1,000. So when you start to look for product market fit, the first thing is to find pain. And the pain has to be excruciating. Right? Like there's many pains in life. My hip hurts right now. My shoulder's a little, a little strainful. I ain't doing shit about it. Right? Like I'm not going to the doctor because I've got a tight shoulder or a tight hip. But if I was bleeding, outright bleeding here, then I'd go immediately to the emergency room. Right? Like I'll do something about it. And that's the first thing you have to find is you have to find pain that is as bloody and excruciating as possible for these organizations, for the buyers you're looking to serve. And if that pain is not there, nothing you'll do will change it. Right? Like you're not gonna make up the pain. It's not gonna happen. Like the pain has to be there. That's the initial driver to partner with you on solving the pain, treating the pain, but the pain has to be there. And I think that what we've done with CyberStarts was an immensely thorough process of validating the pain. We were 6 months into this process. I called CyberStarts, our investors, and told them, I think we know what we're doing. I think this DSPM thing is real. Like it's good enough. The customers really care about this. They're interested in this. And they told me, well, you're the CEO. You do whatever you want. But if we were going to invest the next 10, 20 years of our lives in this problem, maybe check a little more. Maybe validate that it's really painful enough to drive adoption and to drive change. Right. And I think that was the first thing that is super, super critical, is identifying and articulating a very precise pain that the customers cared enough about to do something. Without that, I think none of this would have happened. Right. And when you look back from the perspective Cyera is in today, you also understand why that's so critical. Because in the early days, the product is very limited. Mm-hmm. Like, the first version of the product, the only thing we could do was scan data in AWS. Right. Now, that would have not been a company that would have gotten through the desert to where we are today. But it takes time to mature the product offering and to get the product offering to become something that, every enterprise can adopt and every enterprise is adopting. But if the pain is not urgent enough, then you're not going to be able to find those customers that have enough AWS that they'll be willing to buy your product just so you can scan data in AWS. And they believe in you and they believe in your vision and they believe that maybe 6 months from now, you'll also be able to scan data in other systems. And 2 years from now, you might be able to scan data almost in every system. And 5 years from now, you will become their full data security platform and enable them to change the way they do data security today. So you have to find pain that is important enough for somebody to take a risk on you from the customer's lens.
Who was the first customer to take that risk on you and sign the first contract?
That's, nobody knows they're the first customer. So.
Everybody's the first customer.
But there was a team in Buffalo, New York. There was a cloud-first public company with a lot of AWS that had a lot of sensitive information and a lot of cloud and were very, very excited about what we were doing. Also very critical of what we were doing. And they were our first customers, the first customers that signed. We visited them in Buffalo 2 times before we solidified the partnership. And it was a beginning of a great partnership. There's still customers and growing with us every year, expanded the coverage to many other systems. as we imagined, and we're using the product for many capabilities that we didn't even imagine in those early days that we'll be able to provide.
How do you think about sales and go to market? Like, what have you guys done different than other companies? Because everyone's obviously selling to the same people. Everyone's selling to CISOs. Everyone's trying to get the CISO's attention. CISO has 1,000 problems. From a priority perspective, it could be every day shifts. How do you get in there?
I think that many people have a bit of an illusion about the transition from founder-led sales to professional sales. Okay. And like people imagine it like you're running in a baton race and the founder is running and then they hire a sales leader and they pass the baton on to the sales leader and then the sales leader is running, right? Like that's it. We moved from founder-led ssales to professional sales. Well, that wasn't our experience. I remember when I was coming up, Evgeny at Arbis told me, one of the things he told me that really, really helped me, probably he doesn't even remember this, but he told me, Yotam, up until 20 million ARR, you are selling every dollar. You're going to have a sales team, they're going to do things, they're going to manage the accounts, they're going to do a lot of things. But you have to sell every dollar at least up until 20 million ARR. And that's more what it looked like for us, right? Like the transition from founder-led sales to professional sales in the early days, it's not, hey, I was doing the selling, now you're on board, thank you so much for coming. Here it is, just make the quota, huh? Like, it's just not gonna happen in the early days. I think that, now is the first point in the company's journey where I feel like the sales teams got it. Right? Like, it doesn't mean I'm not involved. It doesn't mean I'm not on it. It's always the company's most critical mission because sales earns us the right to build product. Right? Like, we can only make our vision come true from a product perspective if we're selling. Right. If we're not selling, then there's never going to be that vision that we're sharing with the market and working on with the market. That's why it's so crucial. And I think that transition is a much longer transition than people imagine. And the place that founders have to take within the sales motion is much more prominent than what sometimes I see other people doing and not always getting the results they hoped for.
Right. But it's an interesting transition from founder to management. And then you still have to be involved. It's so necessary because a lot of people are very quick to once they're able to give it off and that's it. I mean, a founder has multiple problems on a daily basis.
Yeah, in general, I think over the company's early maturation stages, sometimes there's this illusion that you're going to hire somebody and they're going to solve the problem. By hiring them, you've solved the problem. That's never the case. Right. You hire somebody great, they can be an amazing catalyst for solving the problem. But most of the challenges that startups deal with, they touch every aspect of the merchandising cycle of that startup. So you never have just a sales problem or just a marketing problem or just a product problem. It's some combination of all of them together. And that's where the founders can really make a unique difference because it's not just about doing the right things in sales or marketing or customer success. It's also about being able to stitch the story together end to end from how we acquire a customer, how we communicate with customers, what happens in their onboarding stages, what expectations have we set with them for outcomes, and does the product fulfill those expectations? Can we show them that the product fulfilled those expectations? Can we show them that the product overachieved those expectations? How do we expand? How do we grow? That entire customer journey, which is tied intimately to the machine you're building that is a SaaS company, you have to have some oversight over that. Right. And that's where a lot of the work has been in the past 2 years to make that machine orchestrated and smooth.
Right. What have you learned from Doug Leone?
What haven't I? Doug has been a great partner, amazing investor and board member for us. I think there's many lessons that are concrete lessons that I learned from Doug. But I think the biggest thing that Doug did for us is he believed.
Right.
And there was something about having somebody who's so utterly prominent in his space. He's built some of the best companies in the world, ServiceNow, Nubank, companies that are aspirational.
Right.
And having somebody like that look at you and look at Tamar and me in that sense and say, you guys got this, and you know what you're doing, we're with you, but you can do that. That was a huge confidence boost, right, to have that external validation from somebody who's actually seen these companies grow from zero to where they are today. That was a huge power boost that we got from Doug.
And what else have you learned, from any other stuff?
I think most concretely, the first lesson he taught us was the merchandising cycle, which Bogomil Balkansky from Sequoia has actually posted about recently, I think in the last few months. It's definitely worth a look for every founder that's working on SaaS companies today. But it's about how the shit rolls downhill in a SaaS company all the way to sales. At the end of the quarter, you measure sales. And if you don't like the result, you say, the sales leader is the problem. But many times the problem is somewhere higher up the hill where things started rolling down and not working.
Yeah.
And how you actually can go and debug the company and the process and find where you need to make the changes to impact the results at the end that you measure with sales.
Right.
So that was a first big lesson when we got to Sand Hill Road for the first time. Doug was drawing on the whiteboard, explaining to us the merchandising cycle. That's an important piece of knowledge for every founder in the business. I think, other lessons that we've learned from Doug. I think that Doug manages to balance very well bullishness with conservatism. So, on the one hand, Cyera is a hyper-growth company that's running hot, going into the market fast, looking to conquer the world. But on the other hand, it's a financially sensible company that makes sense, that has a path, that has the right efficiency metrics. And, you always have to balance those two things. We don't want to end up with companies that are like bubble age companies, growth that is being fueled by spend, but without any efficiency, without any substance to it. And I think that Doug was always a pretty good indicator on the balance between those how much to push the gas and how much to let things come, and let them arrive, let the market arrive.
Right. Interesting. We'll talk about the problem you just mentioned about the merchandising problem, because it sounds like you're at that stage where it's going to happen, because when you have 400 people, right, you're not hearing from the person that's building the product. There's probably 3 levels until that happens, so reaches you. He has his manager, that person has their manager and their manager. And then it's like, okay, when there's a management committee, then we're going to present it to Yotam. How do you make sure that you're able to stay in touch with the lowest, I wouldn't call it the lowest level, but the person actually building the product that's able to have that direct communication with you so you can stop the problem before it starts bleeding?
It's a good question. I think, first of all, I'm very fortunate that many of the builders, especially the first builders at the company, are people that I go back with a very, very long way. Some of them have been with since 2010.
Wow.
And that helps that they always know they can give me a call or call me out on any BS that might exist. And they have that direct line, and it doesn't matter if I'm the CEO of Cyera, I'm their buddy from the trenches, and they'll never get confused about that,
right,
and I won't either. So that's helpful. At the same time, I think that you have to develop mechanisms in order to ground yourself, right? Like to make sure that you know what's going on at the ground level. And the best mechanism for me is actually the customers, right? Because the customers they know it all.
Right.
They know what's good about the product. They know what's bad. They know what's good about the team. They know what's bad. Like, they can tell you more about your company oftentimes than anybody inside the company, because at the end of the day, they're the goal. Right? Like, that's the reason we're building software. That's the reason we're servicing it. It's to provide value to them. So I think that continuing to spend a lot of time with the customers, even after a purchase, as their existing customers, having that coffee with them and asking them, tell me everything. Tell me the good, the bad, the ugly. Like, I want to know what's your experience through and through. Don't sugarcoat it for me. Tell me where we need to improve. Tell me where there's been friction in your organization. What's stopping us from expanding the deployment in a more major, in a more meaningful way? What other value would you expect to get from Cyera that you're not getting today? And if you keep your hand on that pulse, then you're able to use it as a guide to really center the company around what matters to our customers.
It's also interesting. I'll add on to that is that people don't realize the power the brand of the power of the brand the brand of a CEO has. Because a lot of people, when they think of the CEO, think, oh my gosh, the CEO, right? I'm sure you know this. Like, if you go to Israel, CEO, I'm also the CEO. Everyone's the CEO. But like, it comes to a place where it comes to like a corporate, the CEO can have a really influential role, especially when it comes to customers. Like, if you're going to call up a company and say, hey, the CEO's on the phone, most times they'll talk to you, especially on the size of the company, and you're able to really find the problem over there. So that's interesting. Your last round of funding was $300 million. $300 million. It's a lot of money. And it got you to $3 billion valuation. And it was pretty good. I think it was 6 months after your last round of funding?
Yes.
So why did you raise so quickly? And how did you raise? What was the process? 'Cause I'm assuming raising $300 million is very different than raising $50 million. The storytelling is different, or it could be the same. I don't know.
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure that our story is so indicative in this sense, but this last round was preempted by the insiders. So Excel wanted to double down and wanted to put more money into the company, and we were very, very happy about that. We had some outsiders, Sapphire, that we were in close touch with and had a good relationship with, that wanted to join in. And it was very simple to put it together because the results were there and the traction was there. But I think that generally, as the company grows and we're starting to talk about these valuations that are higher, you have to be able to ask yourself, first of all, before you tell the story to investors, you have to ask yourself, what do I have here? Do I have a company that can be a $10 billion company, a $50 billion company, a $100 billion company? What do I believe that we can build here? And I think that for me, that's very easy. I think the story for Cyera, the place Cyera plays in the market today, I believe that Cyera can be a $50 billion, $100 billion company. Cybersecurity companies are already playing at that size. It's not new. Maybe 5 years ago, I wouldn't have had that confidence because we wouldn't have seen cybersecurity pure players playing at those scales. But today, looking at what I'm seeing in the market, how important this is for customers, how quickly they're adopting it, how complex are the deployments and the value propositions that they're looking to achieve. It's not like Cyera today is, we solved the data security problem for customers. It's all done. We can go home and make tea. And that's not the case. Customers want 100 more things from us, that we are working as fast as possible from a platform perspective to provide in a unified way. But they don't only want those things, they're willing to pay more for those things. So the ability to go and grow with these enterprises into 8-figure deals and into 9-figure deals at some point is there. We just need to go and execute on it. So I'm very bullish about the company's story. AI is a huge tailwind for data security. You think about AI, it runs on 2 things. It runs on GPUs and it runs on data. And we're seeing how much money the GPUs are making for NVIDIA. When it comes to data, we want to be the cybersecurity company that's focused on data and is able to provide a data security platform that takes an enterprise end to end. From discovery and classification, which was where we started, to DSPM, data security posture management, to DLP, and beyond. There's many more things that the customers need from us, and it's our job to make them a reality and to do that quickly.
Did you think, when you're starting the company, that this is going to happen and it gets so big?
No. No, I didn't think. In the early days, we had a lot of market risk, as I said.
Right.
And we didn't know if this market is going to be happening. We didn't know if it's going to really become a market. A few days ago, Microsoft launched their DSPM product. Palo Alto acquired, CrowdStrike acquired, Zscaler is building, Rubrik acquired, right? Like there's definitely a market happening around DSPM, and our story is bigger than DSPM. It's the full data security story. And I think that is a very, very real market that we have access to. And we're very fortunate to have the traction with customers and the resources from funding and from people to be able to go and execute on that. Because having the opportunity is one thing, but being able to execute on it and take it, that's another thing entirely that we are very, very grateful for. A lot of stars have to align for something like that to happen. And we're fortunate to be in that position right now. And I hope that we'll be able to capture that opportunity to its full extent.
Wow. I want to talk about wealth for a second, because for all practical purposes, we could call you a wealthy man now. I mean, the company has a big valuation. You have to assume that, like, you have a nice percentage of it. How has your perspective of money changed, and how do you think about money now? And how do you plan also because eventually the company will go public, God willing, or it could get acquired for billions and billions of dollars. And at that point in time, you'll have way more money than you ever thought of you ever have in your life as a kid. Way more. I mean, you're a kid from the kibbutz, from a shav, right? Like, so how are you planning for that? I don't know if you can really plan for it, but also how do you think about it now? Especially, and then your own kids eventually. I mean, I'll take the question further. How are you going to teach your own kids? Because your kids are going to grow up very different than you grew up.
Yeah. So I think, first of all, I like tahini and cherry tomatoes, and I'm still gonna like tahini and cherry tomatoes, no matter how many dollars I might have in the bank. So I think for me, money is not that important, and I understand that it's a funny thing to say in New York, in America, the epicenter of the world's commerce. But I've never lacked for anything in my life, and I don't see many benefits to having more. I think that generally, if you can eat what you want to eat and you can do what you want to do at a basic level, you're going to be just as happy as the next guy. I think that money is something that can help you impact things. So being able to give, being able to donate, being able to support causes that I believe in, that our family believes in, is something that, I'm grateful that we have the opportunity to do, and we'll probably have more opportunities to do down the road. But I don't think there's as much impact to a person's life as some people might believe. I like my work and I like my family, and that's where I spend my time. And it doesn't take much wealth in order to do that. You just have to be conscious of where your heart is, what's important to you, and be there. So, right now I'm working on my personal goal for next year, which is to get back into shape a bit after a few years of neglecting my body. And, you need a pair of sneakers and a hoodie, and you can go running in New York. It doesn't take that much. And that's my perspective in many cases. And maybe I'm a little naive, and I'll find out that things look differently from there.
Have you thought about, by the way, you are looking great. I just want to give you that compliment. I wanted to tell you before. Have you thought about how you're going to teach your kid? Because your kids, right, I mean, kids are young still, but eventually you will have to talk to them about it.
Yeah, I think when I was a kid, our family didn't lack for anything. My parents weren't wealthy, but they were well off. And when I was 14, my parents sat me down in the living room and told me, "Hey, you're a little spoiled. You need to go get a job." And I did not understand what they want from me. What are they talking about? What do they mean a job? I'm studying, I'm playing basketball, I'm doing judo, I'm in the Boy Scouts. Like, what's a job now? What does that have to do with anything? But they pushed me. They pushed me to work, to learn how to earn money. In the beginning, I did gardens. I did gardening in the village, cleaned the cars, walked around house to house with a bucket and a few mops and tried to get $5 to clean people's cars. And that wasn't a great business. So I moved up and found new business avenues that were a little more effective in that sense. But I think that work, in my mind, is not about money. It's about fulfilling yourself. It's about bringing your skills and your talents into the world and creating something. And that is something that is going to be very important for me with my kids. I think that work is one of the most empowering things that people have. And I think it's one of the things that I'm most grateful for in my life is the work that I've got to do and the work that I'm getting to do now. And I think that the attachment between work and pay or work and money has been overdone. I grew up, my grandparents were part of a youth movement in France and Algeria that was called La Gordonia, where work was a value. It was not a way to accomplish something. It was an end by itself. It was a value by itself. And that has very much been my mindset through my whole life, and that's a mindset that I hope to instill with my kids. And I think that when people feel their own ability to create, their own ability to do, their own ability to make something happen in the world and make an impact, that is a very empowering feeling that matters more than anything else in the person's self-confidence and in their ability to live a fulfilling and gratifying life.
Yeah. I fully agree. Work is, not that I want to call meaning, but definitely provides fulfillment. So it's interesting to hear. I always say, entrepreneurs that become very successful, they always have some type of small venture as a kid. So it's interesting to hear you started a garden business, a car washing business.
The real business was my Dungeons and Dragons course.
Really?
So after the car washing and the gardening didn't work out that well from a financial perspective, wasn't a great business to run. I opened a Dungeons and Dragons class in the village. I opened it for the 6th graders. And then the 8th graders told me, hey, we want a class as well. So I had another one for the 8th graders. And that was my business for 3 years during high school. Running a Dungeons and Dragons afternoon activity. That was a profitable business. That made money.
What'd you do with the money?
I had an ATV. I had a quad. That was my big spend. That cost a lot of money back then, and I could afford it and I could take care of it. And the money lasted me until I started getting paid by the military, which was 4 years later. So it was good money in those high school days, doing Dungeons and Dragons in a small village in the north of Israel. But it lasted. The experience there was really important, especially the commitment. Right? Like when you are an instructor instructing younger kids, you're committed to being there twice a week. And it doesn't matter if you have a big test coming up, and it doesn't matter if you don't feel well. It doesn't matter if you had a bad day. It's your show, and you gotta be there. And I think that commitment throughout high school, no matter what I had going on in my own life, but needing to show up twice a week and put on a show for these kids and make something of it and make it fun for them and make it educational for them and make it an experience. That was a very empowering experience for me to have to do that for 3 years and, to see the business evolve. It was a good run.
You just mentioned such an interesting point. I think it's super powerful for any founder. You have to show up if you're motivated or not motivated. It makes no difference, right? You have to show up either way. So you can't wait until you get motivated and have motivation and get inspired and then show up. No, you show up and then you'll get motivated and inspired. And especially now in our generation, where it's like everything's a TikTok generation and everyone waits for that inspiration or to be happy. It doesn't exist.
Motivation is flimsier than people account for it. I think that, it's very hard to run a business like this, a hard driving business that, is very intense, 7 days a week, many, many hours a day. It goes into your dreams, it goes into your holidays, it goes into every part of your being. It's hard for you to gather your energy.
Right.
Like you have to be able to gather your energy into every conversation, every meeting, every aspect. And I think that's very important quality that Talpiot actually has been a very big proponent of. We always used to joke, Talpiot is Israel's technological leadership academy. It's where I met Tamar, my co-founder, Jonathan, our VP engineering, Shai, our first team leader in the engineering department. Today we have about 13 Talpiot alumni in the company. There's only 1,000 in the world, so it's a good collection. But we always used to joke about Talpiot that if nothing else, we taught people how to work 7 days a week, 18 hours a day. And then when they move on to the real world and they only work 5 days a week, 12 hours a day, they feel wonderful. Like it's the most relaxed thing they've ever done in their lives. So hard work is important.
Yeah. What's next for Cyera?
I think that Cyera is at the beginning of its growth journey.
Right.
I think our progress in the market has been exceptional, but as anything that progresses very fast, the next quarter, the next year matters way more than what came before it.
Right.
And next year is going to be a very big year for us. It's a year where we want to take a substantial presence in the market. It's a year where we want to grow our offering to customers from a product to a platform. It's a year where we want to grow our company from 400 people today to 800 or even 1,000 at the end of next year. Wow. So there's a lot of growth in every aspect. And that growth, it's not, there's no magical engine driving it. It's people who need to recruit those 400 or 600 people next year. And it's people who need to go and get to those customers and, get a deal done with them, start working with them, provide value to them. It's people who need to build a platform, build the software, integrate trailing, expand into other products organically. So it's a very intense ride for everybody involved. We're loving it. I think that, it's a work hard, play hard culture that we've established and is our style. But we have a heck of a year ahead of us. And after it, there's much more to come.
It's just incredible to see the energy that you still have and the motivation you still have for it. Like, would you do it again? If you knew the journey, I mean, obviously if you knew the journey would be this, like this, of course, but would you do it again?
Do it again in another phase or do Cyera again?
I'll get either. I mean, if you did another phase after success Cyera, it's different, but like, would you do Cyera again without knowing where we'll go?
Definitely. At the end of the day, I think, it's a very fun and very fulfilling to see Cyera progress and succeed and grow. It's a great thing. Right. But at the same time, it's not what it's about. I think the experiences with my friends, with Tamar, making new friends, building relationships here in the States, putting a team together, seeing that team overcome challenges, grow, bond together. That for me is what it's really about. Right. Like the company is an outcome of the work, but the work is by itself an end. Right? Yes. Like it's not a means to an end. We don't work to make Cyera great. We work to work, and if the company grows as a result of that, that's wonderful. But we work in order to bring our skills, all of us, right? Like it's not just me. It's 400 people now. Wow. To bring our skills, to bring our talents, to bring our powers into the world, manifest them into something, and see that something take off. And I think that, seeing that at a growing scale is an extremely, extremely exciting experience for everybody involved. And that's really the bonding experience, right? Whether the company, obviously it's easier or more fun to do if the company does well, but I don't think that by itself is the end all be all.
Right. What do you tell to the next generation of Yotams? Because you are at the stage now where people are looking up to you and saying, hey, I want to be like Cyera. I want to be like Yotam. What would you tell these kids that are graduating from Talpiot or 8200 or anybody that's looking to start a cyber company, young kids, and they see you and like, I want to be like that?
It's a good question. I think that it's not that easy. And I'm not saying that in a bad sense. I'm saying that I think that people oftentimes don't really know what they want. In Israel, it's very popular to found a company, but I'm not sure that people always understand what that entails, and they want the thing itself, not the outcome.
Yes.
And I think, you have to want to be in that position, right? If you want peace and quiet, don't start a company. and if you want to be able to draw clear lines between work and life, don't start a company. And if you want to drive a company to success, especially in competitive markets, I can only talk about my own experience. Don't know, there's many things that happen in the world. But in my experience, in enterprise software, in SaaS, in a competitive cybersecurity market, the energy you're able to put into it matters a lot.
Right.
And it's not 6 months of energy, and it's not a year of energy. It's years and years, decades of energy to fuel that growth. You have to be in an extreme learning mindset. Because if you're doing your job well, you're waking up every few weeks to a new company.
Yeah.
And you have to relearn everything. And what worked yesterday is not going to work tomorrow. That's a very unstable situation to be in on a personal level. And, I think people should really validate with themselves that they really want it in that sense. And they want it so much that even if it's not going to go well, they're going to be happy about it.
Right.
Because if it goes well, that's great. But oftentimes it doesn't. And I think that that's something you have to accept when you walk into a challenge like this.
Right.
I think for us at Cyera, our first year out of stealth wasn't a good year. It was actually a pretty bad year. Yeah, we went through a lot of challenges that year. Things were not working well. It was a tough year for us from every aspect in the company after a lot of expectations set by the Series A investment. It was not an easy year. I packed up my family, picked up the visas from the embassy in Tel Aviv in the morning, and in the evening we were on a plane to New York, and a lot of changes, a lot of instability, and no success. Right. Success was very limited back then. And keeping our heads up through that and finding our ability to continue to drive and continue to move and continue to progress and continue to learn and continue to adapt through the times where things were not working out. That's the things that was what was important, and that was what the hard part. When the world is giving you a ton of positive feedback, it's very easy to focus or fixate on that. But in order to build a company, there's many, many challenges you need to overcome, and you have to find the energy, you have to find the determination, you have to find the adaptability. So I really hope that people that are going down this path are doing it for the right reasons for themselves and for the world. Right. But at the same time, I think that a lot of people can have success. Right? If there's something you see from New York that you might not see from Tel Aviv, is how big the market is. Yeah. How big the economy is. How much space there is to do great things. And, in Tel Aviv, when people start a cybersecurity company, they're looking around and but there's already an investment here in this space, and there's already an investment here in this space, and there's a competitor here and a competitor there. How am I gonna start a company? And when you look at it from the States, it seems a little different. And you're saying, okay, the market is enormous. There's endless market. If what you're doing, if you're solving a real problem for customers and you're solving it well, there's going to be a market for your software. There's going to be a market for your company. And that market is going to be much bigger than you imagine today. Right. And I think that that's something you see from the States, from New York, that's harder to see from the streets of Tel Aviv, where you look around and there's nobody to sell to. There's a lot of companies and organizations to sell to in enterprise software in the States.
Right. Yeah, that's a very, very valid point on so many levels. But I want to ask you about that first year. What kept you going?
I don't remember. I think I was so tired. What kept me going? I think what kept me going most of all is that we had the right people. Okay. I love the team. I love the people we had and still have. I love the team that, joined Tamar and me on this journey and believed in us when there was not much to believe in and chose to join this crazy ride. And I didn't want to let them down. And I didn't want to let my investors down. I wanted to find a way. And I believed that we can. And I think that the thing that helped me most back then is focusing on the small wins. Right? Like, there's so many things we don't control in life and we don't control in our companies. What can you control? What can you do today? Can you meet 5 customers today? Do that. Can you meet 5 customers tomorrow? Do that. Right? And, and bit by bit, it started accumulating and it started getting us back on track to where we needed to be.
Right. Do you see the world from a different perspective now with, let's say, the success that Cyera and yourself has achieved in previously? Like from a different standpoint, different viewpoint, or the access that you have now and everything?
In many ways. Like some of it, I don't know if it's necessarily to say that I see the world in a different perspective, right? Okay. But for me, personally, there's a big experience of gratitude to so many people, organizations in my life that enabled me to acquire the skills and experiences that I needed on this journey. Right? So, everything from my first grade teacher to my math teacher in high school that was very demanding and taught me a bit about hard work, and my physics teacher and my family, my uncles, my aunts, my cousins, my grandparents, my parents, of course, my sister, my friends, and how every experience in life, shapes you and adds to what you become and gives you the opportunity to grow. And I think that when you're in a state of mind where you're feeling like you're managing to bring your skills and talents into the world in the way you hoped, for me, it triggers a lot of gratitude to all the different people that taught you, mentored you, supported you, just loved you sometimes on the path and helped you acquire the confidence and acquire the capabilities to do things in the world. And sometimes the experiences that shape you aren't necessarily very professional experiences. Sometimes they're very personal experiences that you shared with your family or friends. And I think that I have a lot of gratitude to the ecosystem in which I was raised, in which I grew up, and to my parents for giving me that chance, and for my wife and partner for supporting me on this journey and being my second partner. I always joke that I have 2 partners, Tamar and Noah, my wife, and those are my 2 closest partners.
I think, any closing thoughts?
I think it's good to see you. It's been a busy few years since we had a chance to do one of these, and I'm glad we got another chance. And I want to be a bit appreciative and thankful for what you're doing in the world. I think that within the Israeli ecosystem and within the New York ecosystem, you're a very big light, always bringing a huge smile into every interaction and such a positive attitude. and helping so many founders through this podcast and through your work to really, accelerate their dreams and make an impact in the world, do things that matter. And that's amazing to see how you've grown and your impact has grown from when we first met as well. So huge appreciation, Ephraim.
I appreciate your kind words. Thank you. And like I said, it's incredible to see how we both grown in the past. You started your company at 30. I think I was then also 30 or 31. And to see what happened the past few years, it's insane. But thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Thank you.
And I look forward to listening to this again and again. And obviously, and we're going to have to do a third segment whenever the next big milestone of the company. I look forward to that one also. So thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for listening to this conversation with Yotam. I hope you enjoy. Now, before you go, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Now, if there is something you really thoroughly enjoy for this conversation, please reach out to Yotam on LinkedIn and Twitter. Send them a note of how much you enjoyed. Go to their LinkedIn page, Cyera. Follow them on all social media platforms. That could be Twitter, LinkedIn, or anywhere else that they are. Besides that, that's all I have for today. So thank you so much for joining us. And I hope to see you back very soon with an incredible brand new episode.